This is Just Tool Basics, and today we're talking about locking pliers, or Vise-Grips, or mole grips, whatever you call them. This is what we're talking about. Hello everyone, welcome to Just Tool Basics. Today's topic is Vise-Grips, or if you're in the UK, mole grips, but in general, locking pliers, locking mechanism tools. And they can be locking clamps, they can be a locking wrench, or they can just be locking pliers, but whatever your term is for them, it's the same mechanism with a different head on it to do a specific job or a group of jobs. This, for example, is for clamping two things to be pressed together, whether that's, like a couple pieces of aluminum and you need them to be squozen together, and you need them to be held together. This allows you to then not need another set of hands holding something together. These are a little bit smaller head, obviously. This is specifically a locking wrench style. And you can see that these two faces are 60 degrees off of each other, specifically designed for holding bolt heads, nuts, other hex-shaped things, and then this little bottom wavy part pushes on it. So, for example, you can see that fits in there, and then the way you adjust these, and this is the same for all of the mechanisms, is you use this adjustment screw here in the back, tighten it to where it has a tiny bit of resistance, right? And that's not super strong. Then you open the jaws back up, give it about a quarter turn, and then clamp it back down. And then that will be set nice and snug. Now, of course, the quarter turn rule is just approximate. If you need to really grip something, obviously that might not be enough, and you may want to do a half turn. Past that, you're probably not going to get the jaws to close. Now, of course, if you're being very, very delicate, you might want to do just a very slight turn past that initial resistance. But once you do a quarter turn, that's good for most typical situations. Now, like I mentioned, the jaws are what differs. These are curved jaws, these are flat jaws. This wrench jaw is very specific to bolts where you don't want to damage them, right? And now, if the bolt is already damaged, and that's why you need vice grips, then the jaws with the teeth are probably what you want, since it may not hit cleanly on the faces. Now, this is preserving the faces of those nuts, and this would just be another set of hands to hold the other side of a bolt and nut situation. But regardless how it works, they all have, as I mentioned, a similar anatomy. The adjustment screw, as we were messing with before, what that's doing is pushing on this arm here, which is the adjustment arm for the bottom of this jaw. So if we do it while it's open, it's a little bit more obvious what's happening. But the adjustment works the same, as I mentioned, and we'll adjust it to grab onto this piece of MDF. So if you start with it undersized, you kind of have to guess, like you squeeze it and then you loosen it a little bit and you squeeze it again. The way to be consistent about it, the way I do it, over loosen it, make it so that it obviously doesn't fit. And then you hold it in place, tighten the screw until it just bites, open it up, quarter turn, squeeze it back again, and it works, right? And then it's on there. It's not going anywhere. Now, if you need it a little bit tighter, you twist it a little bit more, and now it will still work. But now, as you can see here, it's putting little divots in there, which is inevitable. Now, if you tighten it even more, and you really have to squeeze it, it'll squeeze, but now you're definitely damaging the surface of whatever you're biting it onto. And that may be fine, right? Like like I said, if this is a rounded over bolt and you don't care, go to town. You're going to throw the bolt or the nut away when you're done with it anyway. Now, of course, one of the advantages to this mechanism is that there's a stop to it. You know, the jaws aren't like normal pliers where you're squeezing them, and however hard you squeeze is however much pressure it puts on it. You can actually be very calculated with these. So we back it way back off again and get it to where it's just touching, and then you only adjust it a tiny bit. Now it's barely holding it, which may be all that you need. Now, you know, if we're wanting to pull this apart, we can. Again, situationally, be measured in your approach, and these are quite versatile tools. Now you may have noticed that I hit this little flappy guy here. What this is for is it's pushing the inside here, pushes against this little knuckle thing that pokes into that side of the jaw, and then this just helps you release that tension as opposed to having to stick your fingers in there and pull it apart. And it's just helping leverage. You know, you have there's the fulcrum is here, and then this lever helps push that pressure out, because if you've really cranked it down, it may not want to spring back open without some effort. And that's pretty standard on even these small guys, having that lever release. A much older model may not. There's some new mechanism that Vise-Grip has been advertising. I don't have any of them yet, and supposedly it makes it even easier to release the jaws. I haven't had significant problems with it, so it may be an improvement just to have a new product, new tool in your box. Now, I mentioned the different jaw types. The body is just some sort of alloy steel. This looks to be, you know, just alloy steel as well. But these are probably hardened teeth. This is kind of a low buck version. This one definitely is hardened teeth, as that's part of the thing that Vise-Grip advertises. Now Irwin tools, but may come with this like over-molded handle. I mean, they're not fantastic, but they also don't want to fall off because I'd have to take the screw all the way out and blah, blah, blah. This also has a wire cutter included, which seems, I guess, useful. I've literally never used it. I just know it's there. But you would have to adjust it all the way back down to fully tight so that the jaws come together. So, I don't know. I think it's like they had the extra space, so they just threw in an extra feature. Don't ask me. So that's the basic functionality. If you want to, you know, more in-depth look at how this jaw works, it's an over-center system. It has the same kind of rough mechanism as a light switch, weirdly. And by that, I mean, it's like when you're flipping the light switch, you know, you get to that center point and then it snaps to the other side. That's kind of how this works, except that there's just a much shorter distance on that other side. So in that effect, the tightest clamping point is actually like right at that peak, and then it actually releases a tiny bit. Like, if you think of it as like 1%, it's not like I've measured it or anything, but like it just releases past that most gripped point. And that pressure on, in this case, the other side of its jaw, since I don't have anything in there, but that pressure back against the mechanism is what's holding it in place, and that's what lets you be able to let go of it and, you know, use it as another set of hands, as opposed to pliers where you'd have to hold on to it in order to make it work. And then if it's really tight, like let's tighten this more than would be normal. So now it's really tight on there. Like pulling this apart without the use of this lever thing would be quite difficult. But if you press on that, then it'll pop apart. But like I mentioned, you rarely need it to be that tight, especially with this kind where it has like a really good, you know, holding faces for holding bolts and nuts. That level of squeezing isn't necessary, usually. So that's Vise-Grips, or locking pliers, or locking wrenches, or locking clamps. Until next time, this is Just Tool Basics.